Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's great to be with every one of you today. Thanks for joining us. Joined now by one of my favorite people in the whole world. He is an absolute dear friend. Him and his beautiful bride are two of my favorite humans on the entire earth. In fact, the other day I was sitting at dinner with someone and they said, if you could just spend a weekend with just one person on a beach or just somewhere away just to hang out with. First name I said is, oh my God, my buddy John. I love the way he thinks. I love the way he processes information. I love the way he looks at things. And one day when I die, if I die first, one of the things that I know that he'll remember is that he has profoundly impacted my life and I care about him greatly. He is a decorated journalist. He is a highly successful attorney in the Atlanta Buckhead area. And most importantly, he's my friend, the great Johnny Shop. Johnny, how you doing, bud?
I'm good. And some people out there, they may hear us and think, oh, well, what would those guys do? If we had nothing else to do, we might be able to fill all 24 hours just talking about mostly football and other stuff. We would have no problem filling it, exchanging information and ideas, thinking about this and that. It's just a great world, of course, the NFL. And it's also more
Oh,
fun when you get to spend it with your buddies who are in it as much as you or more. It's been so much fun for so many years now. We're going to keep it going as long as we can.
and the thing I love is it doesn't matter with you and I whether it's religion, politics, sports. Humans should be able to talk about stuff and have honest, open dialogue. And I love the way you think. I tell you something. I would hate to compete against you as an attorney because very rarely have we ever even we don't even disagree a lot, but when we do, I almost always come around to your type of thinking. And I love the way you think. You're very analytical. And anyways, so I'm at dinner at the combine and an NFL executive was like, man, you and I got to go fishing this summer. And I said, okay, we'll do it. He goes, if you could just have a weekend on the beach with anybody. I said, man, my friend John. And he goes, oh, Johnny Guitars. I said, yeah. I said, you would love him. I was telling this guy about how you would love him.
Yeah.
And I was just explaining. I thought, you know what? I'm going to make sure the next time John's on the show that I publicly thank him for what he means to me because you mean the world to me. All right, let's dig in. A lot going on with the Raiders this offseason. And I believe it's a harbinger for their future. And let me explain what I mean. You're the attorney. I want you to break it down analytically. The Raiders would not have even gotten a sniff from Ben Johnson. I know Raider fan does not want to hear this. I don't care if they want to hear it. I'm not trying to be a fan. I'm trying to report truth without Tom Brady. Now, I would not have hired Ben Johnson. I want to make that point completely clear. And you know that. I've said it. This is not a franchise where I think at this point you go get somebody to learn. Okay. But he was still highly sought after. I know this for a fact. I'm not guessing. His team was not even thinking Raiders, were not interested in Raiders. In fact, had sent the message, don't talk to us. But because of Tom Brady, they got in the discussion. Matthew Stafford was not interested in being a Raider. I can tell you when he was leaving Detroit, it was not an option. But Tom Brady got the Raiders in the discussion. You look at this team, they swing for the fences. Now, again, I would have thought getting Stafford would have been fantastic. I do not think getting Ben Johnson would have been. But the fact that they're swinging big, and for the first time in a long time, they're in those discussions. Now, in the interest of fair disclosure, he did not work out well. Josh McDaniels was one of those highly sought after guys. Tom Brady was able to deliver him. I know a lot of Raider fans, those are the years nobody wants to remember, but it's reality. The point is, I think this offseason you are seeing a harbinger that the Raiders are back with the swag of we're the Raiders. We're swinging for the fence all the time. I think this is a big deal. And I think people, rather than debating should have or shouldn't Stafford or what should have or should have Ben Johnson, they need to look at the change in the mentality We're not the bridesmaid. We're the brides now. We're swinging for the fence. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you look at the 32 teams in the league, where am I going to go? Where would I consider going as a free agent, as a coach? Where do I want to be drafted? You step out of that and look across the board at the 32. The Raiders are now in the mix again to really be considered. Should I consider going to New York or Los Angeles or Dallas? Should I consider going? And all of a sudden, the Raiders are in that list really for the get-go for a lot of folks. The state income tax things may not be a huge big deal to you or me, but if you do the math on the Stafford contract, for example, it is a deal. So now the Raiders are in the mix, and it is a new era. It really is, to me, Raiders 3.0. And what you're seeing, what you're talking about is these are the little seedlings, the Ben Johnson thing, the Matt Stafford thing. These are the first couple. The nice thing for the Raiders is they can expect to be in the mix each and every year from here on. They've got a lot of money to spend, as we know, free agency wise. We know they're going to be competing with the Patriots, for example, who've got a lot of money also. But all of a sudden, they're going to be in almost all those conversations. And what's going to hopefully happen is guys around the sport are going to say, hey, that's a place I would like to play. Everybody inside of the NFL knows how good those facilities are in Las Vegas. The Chiefs told you, everybody saw them. After a Super Bowl comes in, the word gets around. Everybody also knows that Tom Brady is there, and there is a value in that relative to consistently performing at a high level and winning that a lot of people want to be part of. So there may be some free agents that don't want to do really anything with the Raiders. They really don't care the name of the team. Their message to the agent is just get me the most money I can. That's fine. For pretty much everybody else out there, all of a sudden the Raiders are now going to be something to consider. This happens as franchises go up and down. This is a big jump forward. The move to Las Vegas has been successful as far as the structure of the organization, the facilities, the setup they have. Obviously, Raiders fans want them to win on a regular basis. There's been some difficult things that have happened over the past, but this really is a new era. And what you're talking about there, from an outside perspective, that is now in play for the Raiders franchise. They're not confused like some franchises are. They're not hamstrung or arms tied behind their back behind an owner that doesn't really know what he's doing or sticks his nose where he's not supposed to. They don't have that. So you put up the 32 and you start going through, where do I want to consider looking to work? Where do I want to consider looking to play? The Raiders are now one that everybody's going to get a consideration of. And yes, without a doubt, Tom Brady is the X factor in that. So let's see what happens when the new NFL year starts. And we may be looking next year talking about, remember, we talked about those seedlings a year ago with Ben Johnson and with Matt Stafford. So I think from an outside perspective, you've hit on something there that really is tangible. They're in the discussion where in the past they probably would not have been.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I think it's fascinating. Pete Carroll, you can't underestimate having a Pete Carroll. John, I want our listeners who hear you every single Saturday to get this. We don't sit down and have a phone conversation about what we're going to talk about. We want it to be like two guys sitting at a bar over a beer and some pretzels. Now, the reason I say that is you just brought up the state income tax. And this week, I've got 3 emails from listeners for you. And the first one is from an NFL player, and it deals with state income tax. And I just want people to know you didn't mention that for the segue, that's a natural segue. I'm going to withhold their name, obviously, but this is from an NFL player. Hondo, I'd appreciate if you and Johnny Guitars would discuss something the next time he's on the show. I understand the jock tax and that certain states charge us, even if we don't live in their state, for playing a ball game in their state. And I have to pay income tax on the money I earned playing in that state. Here is the problem that I have. I had considered going into law, but obviously my life took a different turn, and now I'm in the National Football League. They do not do this on every single person. That's why it's called a jock tax. I have to pay it. To me, that seems discriminatory. If I want to pay the state income taxes of a California, an Illinois, or a New York, I'll sign a contract and go there and play. I don't want to do that if they're not going to charge every person. For example, you don't pay state income taxes when you go to California and cover a football game. It seems discriminatory. So here's my question for Johnny. Is it discriminatory? Could the players win a class action suit against those states for discrimination? Or what about us just simply saying then we refuse to play in those states? If they're going to charge us extra for playing there, that's not something we're interested in doing. I realize this probably won't be a popular question among fans who look at what we make and think I'm being, and he uses a word I won't use, but I would really like to hear John's perspective. It just doesn't seem to be right to me. Now, before you answer this question, I was told that if Matthew Stafford got the exact same contract in California that he was offered and in Vegas, and it was considerably less, he would have saved somewhere around between 13.8 and 15.3 million dollars just in state income tax, just in that. So it is a huge amount of money. I thought that was an interesting question by the player. I think I already know the answer, but go ahead and give it to him.
It is an interesting question. There's also city taxes that come in for a lot of these guys. The short answer is we have basically a progressive tax system. So there's a lot of ability for governments to tax and spend as they choose. So yes, it is picking on higher income earners. And yes, states can pretty much do that. They can draw a line in the sand and say anybody that earns over this much money, we're going to put a state tax on them or put a tax on the income that they earned while they were there. I remember having to fill out a state of New York tax form the first time I did some day labor work for the ABC network on a football game in East Lansing way back when. I had to fill out a state of New York form. I'm not in the state of New York. That's interesting. No big deal. But yes, the short answer is they can do that. There is a lot of ability to tax and spend. There is not a high bar as far as is it legal for us as this state to levy this tax on this kind of income. The bar is very low. It's something called a rational basis standard. So yes, they can pick on you. I don't think there's going to be any leverage for players to say we don't want to play in that state or that city, and actually try to force games or franchises out of there. That's not going to work. Their best method is probably the one that they've gone through, which is try to bargain collectively and basically figure out who's going to cover that tax. You've got different states and different cities involved, and that's okay. That applies across the country. And yes, it absolutely almost exclusively applies to really high earners. I remember doing work in a past life as a financial planner and working with some folks that dealt with people coming in to the city of Detroit and getting hit with the city of Detroit taxes when they played games there. My easy advice for anybody who is subject to this is to get yourself an EA, an enrolled agent. That's a step up from a CPA. An enrolled agent is an absolute specialist in returns for individuals. That person is going to be able to handle and help you set up the best to manage the tax situation. Now, are we going to get to a point in the NFL where there's almost an allowance for this? If you remember, the NHL has gone through different periods of time where the Canadian dollar and the American dollar swayed a good bit. And it cost the Canadian teams some players, and they got upset about it. And they said, hey, we need to get some kind of rebate or some kind of evening out of the system here. I don't know if that'll ever be the case. I don't know if the state taxes are high enough in some places. But if you're earning a ton of money and you're in the state of Florida versus some of the other states or Nevada compared to California or Massachusetts, you're talking about a really big difference. This is an area that used to not be that big of a deal when guys didn't earn that much money. But as the NFL has exploded and the salaries and our salary cap has again exploded, this is on the front of everybody's mind who has to deal with this in a good way. It's a good problem to have. The short answer, I believe, is yes. States can do that. They're going to do it successfully. And I would assume that at some point, it'll be considered by the Players Association and or the owners. Do we have to do something to try to even out the playing field? Because one of the great things about the NFL is how tight that competitive window is. almost all 32 teams have a chance for a good season every single year until at least, I don't know, the end of September.
I got to tell you, as you know, I love hockey, and I have several friends that play in the NHL, coach in the NHL, and all that. And I have one friend who is a absolute superstar. Well, I have several in the NHL, and almost all of them are like, we won't sign with a team from Canada. Don't have any desire to play with a team in Canada. Uh, won't even consider it. Don't they tell their agent it's a non-starter. I won't do it because of their tax system. And I know several that won't go to states like the Bruins that just won't go there. They don't want to play for the Blackhawks. And it has nothing to do with their politics either. They just don't want to pay those extra taxes. I think it's fascinating to me. And it's going to be interesting because I know for a fact, you and I know NFL players who said to us, I'm not going there. I'd love to play for them, but I'm not going there. It just, why would I leave money on the table to have to play there? And I think at some point these states are going to have to say it's hurting our teams, getting people. All right, the next email comes to us, John. It's from hang on, I'm trying to find the person's name. Forgive me. All right. I can't find their name. I'm going to read it though. Johnny, do you think the countless reporters who trashed Richie Incognito who are refusing to apologize because they fear some kind of legal recourse from Richie? One newspaper, I'm going to leave the name out, columnist said he wasn't a decent human being. That's in quotes, and said the Raiders were quote protecting a bully unquote by not letting Incognito talk to the media. This lady has never taken any of it back. Do you think there's any legal reason why these people wouldn't just do the decent thing and acknowledge they got it wrong with Richie? I thought that was very interesting.
There may be. The short reason would be to manage the downside. If a reporter who certainly they make mistakes and probably would say, hey, I'd say something different or I wouldn't have written that, there's really no upside for them saying, hey, I got this wrong. There could be a potential downside. So they are probably better just to leave it in the past and not talk about it, certainly while they're employed. It may not be a big deal, but they may have bosses that say, hey, we don't want you to say anything about that. That's almost 10 years ago. Just don't say anything. So they don't. So yes, there may be a reason. Is there a lot of legal exposure there? I don't think so. There's a lot of room for opinion, and it's difficult to commit defamation against a public figure. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. We don't even know that Incognito is going to try to stir that up and invest or find somebody to pursue those cases. We don't know how viable they are. I don't have the information to know absolutely how viable they are. I just know it's a really long road. But the short answer is yes, there is possibly management and there are possibly other considerations where powers that be say, hey, you reporter, don't say anything about that. So you've written this little, hey, I got this wrong. I shouldn't have said this. Write it, save it, leave it over there. You maybe can print it or do what you want with it after you're done working here, but we don't want you to talk about that going back there at this time. That's possible.
Completely fair. I thought that was a good email. I apologize to whoever sent that I didn't get their name. That was a mistake on our part. So whoever wrote it, I'm sorry. This one comes to us from Glenn Lugens, or it's Lut. I don't know if I'm Lutgens or Lugens. So I apologize in advance. Says Hondo. He wants me to ask you this. Has there ever been an attempt to have a fan union for NFL football that gives some say to the people who financially support the game the most? There are more fans than owners and players, but the masses have no avenue to organize their voice. People could be annual members. They could vote on various aspects of business and game matters and at least present them to the league. It would take an attorney like Johnny to know the ins and outs of what is allowed. I think fans of all teams would love to feel like there is an avenue for voice their opinions. What do you think? In my primary email, I encourage you to check out. Oh, all right. Uh, by the way, Glenn, I have seen the email, the movie that you tell me to go see. It was fantastic. So, John, that's from Glenn Legends and
Yeah.
your thoughts, my friend. Now, I already know the answer here,
I
but
think
go ahead.
I think there may have been a kick or two on the tires in the past, probably before the internet or early in the internet. So I think this attempt has come up before. It's not going to necessarily have any authority or power unless it's recognized by the NFL and or the NFLPA. So I do think these kind of attempts have been made in the past. The bottom line answer is the market forces of attendance and viewership. That's how you can speak. So it's very, very difficult for even a few 100,000 people to make a dent in that thing. It's possible. I'm sure we'll see another attempt to get it rolling at some point the next time there's some kind of inspiration to do so. But I don't think those things would have any kind of effect. Some of us are old enough to remember Sports Illustrated cover, What Can Be Done to Save the NFL, as the NFL went in through a little slip in the early 90s. I may still have that one because I've got like a dozen that I saved. It's pretty amazing to consider how things have changed since then. The loudest voice the fans have really is with attending and watching. And it's not a really loud voice when there's 150 million people or so watching the Super Bowl and there's 55 million people watching, the championship games. So it's an idea that's, I think, been approached before, doesn't really get anywhere. I'm sure owners get letters from groups over the years about this or that, and maybe some of them have some effect, some don't. There is a very famous letter from the Browns owner to a disgruntled fan that you can always find on the internet. It's pretty funny. For anyone that hasn't seen that one, that's a good one. But something like that's possible. Oh yeah, I'll send it to you. It's old. It's pretty old. It's pretty funny. But
all right,
it's probably not gonna move much of a needle if a group like that appeared.
I got some topics I want to talk about, but I have one more email. Do you mind doing one more?
Yes,
it's from a player.
Yes.
Okay, this is from a young man who just finished his second year in college, so he's a year away from being eligible. It's actually from his dad. I'll tell you who it is when we're done. Hondo, if you could ask this question of Johnny for my son, I would appreciate it. We're hearing from some players that he should not get an agent, that an agent doesn't do a whole lot for you other than take a percentage of your income, that a lot of players are moving to getting attorneys who know how to negotiate contracts, and then getting an agent whose only job is to bring him other business deals where they would obviously get a percentage of the business they brought him, but not anything that comes his way. For example, and he names a player, and I won't use the player's name. He told us of 3 business deals where people approached him after he left, and he named a school, and he had to give a percentage of that to his agent. And his agent got a percentage of his contract, which is slotted now in the NFL, and the agent brought no money. I'm curious because I've listened to John for so long. Can you ask him, does he agree with that approach? Hire an attorney to do your contract, an agent to do outside business deals that he brings you, or should you just stick with an agent per the NFLPA? Would love the wisdom.
It's a wild scene out there. There's so many thousands of agents and different people pulling at you, looking to work with you. It's certainly worth considering. The game has changed, a good bit, and it'll continue to change. So when you see guys like Lamar Jackson go do what he did without an agent, that's interesting. When you see a guy like Kirk Cousins go what he done, that's interesting too. And you got Tom Brady, obviously, with a long-term relationship as well. I do think it's worth considering the options. It really is. What is great is if the player realizes that the player's got the power, what does the player actually need? Well, you may just need somebody to negotiate contracts. You may need somebody to filter out business opportunities. I like the idea of things kind of being checked and balanced and crossing over each other. So I don't think there's a bad idea to have a couple of different avenues or outlets. I severely recommend having an EA, really having an EA who's standing alone. I like the idea of having some legal representation and then maybe a little crossover with some business development as well. So I don't think it's a bad idea, because if you go to a
What's it, John? What, tell people at home who don't know, what is an EA?
EA is an enrolled agent. That is a specialist in individual tax returns. So it's a much higher level of knowledge, skill, and proficiency than an everyday tax office or a CPA. I think there's a real value in getting specialist advice for these things. And if you're talking about your rookie deal is slotted, you may not need an agent for that rookie deal. You may not need one. So maybe that gives you some extra time to get a feel for this player likes his agent because of this and that. This guy's set up differently. That gives you maybe a chance to feel things out. With the rookie deals slotted the way they are, maybe you run a little bit of a cost-benefit analysis. What is actually an agent going to do for me? What is the cost of that versus the benefit? And maybe you find somebody you like, and all of a sudden you tell, hey, agent, I understand you want X, but my rookie deal slotted, so we can maybe take a little nibble, start a working relationship. I will give you Y percentage. It's okay. The players should have a real opportunity to bargain for their own benefit. There are more agents out there than the market needs. So go ahead and find a deal, find a setup that works for you, and do not be afraid to employ maybe 3 or 4 different lanes of professionals to help you get set up.
Agree with you, John. All right, you got time? Can we do? Boy, my gosh, we're already 26 minutes into this. Those were some good emails. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I can't believe some of the stuff that people come up with and are interested in. It keeps us on our toes. Yeah, there's no prep. So this is going right off the top of the old head here. Hopefully it's a value to folks. But yeah, we'll take every one of them we've got.
All right. So I was thrilled. And I sent a text to someone, I'm not going to tell everybody who, you know who, and said how excited I was that UNC was going to be on Hard Knocks. Okay. I thought that was going to be gold. I was stunned. Now we're pulling back, and there's going to be one, but it may not be with the NFL. What are your thoughts on this?
It didn't surprise me. It surprised me when they announced this. I'm like, how in the world can that work? But, college pro football is not college football anymore. And then at the last second, the thing gets yanked. There's some weird stuff going on, interesting stuff going on with Bill Belichick. We talked about it a while ago. And then, the scene at the Super Bowl or around that caught my eye with the girlfriend wearing the Falcons Super Bowl championship t-shirt. What was that? They make shirts for both teams if they win the Super Bowl. The loser, they usually send them to a place around the world that needs clothing that's very far away. Somehow one of those shirts ends up in hand of Bill Belichick. She ends up wearing it. I mean, you can take that how you will. I know around here in Atlanta, it was taken as a certain finger to the Atlanta Falcons, just reminding them, hey, you could have had this, and maybe you could have had Brock Bowers, and instead you're running around maybe a little bit shaky as a franchise. Wow. And then we hear Hard Knocks is going to Belichick. It's a new era, obviously. The Belichick Show with Saban, HBO documentary, the great Belichick podcast universes that he had last season. Are we really going to get a peek inside the hood of him trying to teach teenagers? No, that's a bummer that it couldn't work out. Who do we want to see? Well, we've talked about the extraordinary situation last year with the Giants and how almost ridiculous it looked at times. Obviously, that scared every franchise. Like, we don't want that kind of camera in here off season. Somebody's got to do it. Here's what I want to see. I think that makes the most sense. Give us the follow-up story in Chicago. Go in there with the Bears off season, go in there with the Bears again preseason, and then leave the Bears alone. But I want to see the contrast in Chicago between year 1, year 2. Caleb Williams, one staff, another staff, same GMs. I hope they can pull something out. Hard Knocks is on a roll. Look, they hit it big with that Giants thing. They hit it big. And that NFC North in season was the best in season they've had yet.
I want Raiders to get Hard Knocks coming in the preseason. Raiders, Raiders, Raiders. That's my vote. All right. Jimmy Johnson retires. Now, I need to give a couple of caveats. I love Jimmy. He's not a friend, but I've had several interactions with him. I like him. Several of my friends who played and coached with him love him. He's a different duck. A lot of people forget he was a great college football player. He was not a good one. He was great. He got to Oklahoma State. A lot of people don't even know that he coached there. And that is where I got my first connection with him was through people at Oklahoma State. Tremendous coach. He goes to Miami, excuse me, where that program was already kind of on the upswing, and he did nothing to hurt it. But I have a lot of friends that played for him, coached with him in Dallas, that loved him, thought he brought a new way of thinking to the NFL, and his retirement. I thought he was a great journalist, not really a journalist, a commentator. He would tell you he's most proud of being a great fisherman. I am, and he is a great fisherman, by the way. He's fantastic. I am more impressed with how he's evolved as a man, as a father, how he has grown as a human. But he is a looming shadow over the league and an icon. Your thoughts on the retirement of Jimmy Johnson?
Well, his evolution as a man, he really talked about that in his Hall of Fame speech. If you haven't seen that one, it's a little bit raw, but it's a good one. It's a really good one.
I cried. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, as a person that has connection to him, I'm in no way claiming a friendship. I cried. I thought it was moving. I thought it was genuine. To me, everyone talks about Michael Irvin's, which was fantastic. It was fantastic. I think his was just as good personally.
Yeah, it was a really good one. It was a little bit raw, but it was not over raw as a couple of them have been. It really covered the whole thing, though. You don't like. It's okay if somebody doesn't want to go through everything, but if you're going to, you want to cover everything relatively fairly. And this guy was just like, "Hey, here's kind of what it is. Here's kind of what it was. Here's kind of how I got to where I got." It's like, wow, it's impressive. What a career! It's one thing to be really good at something. This guy's really good at almost everything he touched. And when you look back, it's going to be like some people they don't have any recollection of him coaching in college, or maybe they don't even know what kind of coach he was at the Cowboys. They've seen him on TV for decades. An incredible career. And yeah, again, somehow you see him with the Instagram with the fish. That is never going away. That guy loves getting it done out there on the boat. This guy knows the sport so inside and out. It's out of this world. And it's a little bit amazing that he didn't come back in to the NFL. I know there were some opportunities 10 or 15 years ago that were at least considered. But when he steps away, there's going to be a big void. There's so much football knowledge. The guy has seen all 360 degrees of the sport. His impact is going to be felt more a couple of decades down the road. We have Troy Aikman reminding us on a regular basis about Jimmy Johnson. But to me, this is probably an underrated coaching career because he's on TV so much and has been on TV so much. You just kind of take him for granted. And yeah, he won at a very polarizing place. Yes, we all know that. Some of us are not Cowboy fans, and some of you out there are not Cowboy fans. But I got a feeling that we've underrated how good of a football coach Jimmy Johnson was. And I think his legacy in that area is going to grow over time as we do miss him. And the folks at Fox, it's going to be a big shakeup next fall when he's not around.
All right. Now, the draft and smoke screens. They're always there.
They're coming up now, aren't they?
But I think it helps somebody with me because I've been around for so long. I guess that means I'm just old, that I have trusted sources that I know aren't going to lie. And I know there'll be some that say, hey, I don't want you to report this. And because I've built that trust, they're able to talk to me. But I love what I call smokescreen season. I love it. Your thoughts on smokescreen season?
It's already evolving, isn't it? Some random report that Shadur Sanders was arrogant in conversation. First thing that struck me was that's probably on purpose from somebody that wants him to slip. We are in the smokescreen season, and it's going to get going. And it's funny to watch. If you watch the NFL media wind blow from day to day, we're going to see Cam Ward's the top pick today, and then who knows in a couple weeks. The guy I really have my eye on as far as where does he move is Jackson Dart. There was some wind behind him out of the Senior Bowl. There's probably some people that want to keep that really quiet. They don't want to tell. They don't want to report it how much they like his potential. But does that get out? It is smokescreen season, and it's a fun one to watch. You've got some injury issues with the Penn State kid. I'm just looking out each day to see what is reported, what is intentionally leaked, what is blown out there. I assume it's pretty much all smoke. That's where I am now. I'm pretty much assuming it's all smoke. It's just different with Deion Sanders' son this time. I'm thinking that's going to be even more smoke. And again, I'm expecting it to blow every single direction possible to try to keep everybody, in the clear. He could go number 1. He could go number 25. That's what, if that happens, where there's a spread where his pick slot is so widespreadly, I think that that smokescreen would have been effective. But man, it's something to watch. I don't know. It's hard for me now, maybe as a little older, to not think that almost all of it is smoke. We've come a long way from example, way back when you were like, Jake Long is going to be the number 1 pick way before the draft, and it really wasn't much of a question. Or Glenn Dorsey, I think also. Some of those old days, like, there's no smoke, this is the guy. That's not the way it is anymore. There's more smoke than ever.
Yeah, more smoke than ever. And I got to tell you, so let me just say this. I've made this clear before. I would not consider Deion a friend, but I've had multiple interactions with him outside of the game of football. I really like Deion. I have met Shador several times. I like Shador. People say, oh, Hondo hates Shador. I don't hate Shador. Just talking to NFL people, they didn't think he was the number 1 or number 2 quarterback in this class. That's just me reporting truth. Doesn't mean I don't like somebody. And anyways, I have always found Shador to be refreshing, to be funny, I think sometimes he comes, I think some of what people thought was arrogant was his sense of humor. I think he just has fun with it. He doesn't take anyone that has ever, and I don't mean at a press conference, but ever been around Deion. And first of all, I remember one time him and I having a discussion, Prime isn't Deion. And anybody that's ever been around Deion, he is warm, he is kind, he is engaging, he is funny, he's serious. For all of his stardom, and he knows who he is. He knows who Primetime is. He knows how to turn the chair backwards, listen up, and he is one of the most genuine humans I've ever met. And for the interest of full disclosure, I say this all the time. I don't care if I agree with people. I don't care if I disagree with people. I just like genuine. I think it's why you and I connected, because we are who we are. We're not different. If every one of these fans got in a truck with me and you tomorrow, when you're at your condo in Vegas and we're going to breakfast, they would realize it is exactly like this when we're together.
Yep.
But that's Deion. And so Shador grew up in that world. He's met everybody there is to meet who's famous. He's not lured by money. Yes, he's got a Maybach. Yes, he's got a lot of money, but he grew up around it. He doesn't know anything different. My son is 2 years old. He doesn't know what tennis shoes that aren't Air Jordans are, because that's all the only tennis shoes that I wear. Now, are there some people that don't have Air Jordans for their children? Yes, I'm not better than those people, but it doesn't make Dexter bad because he was adopted in a family that's what we wear. Anyways, my whole point is, if people want to talk about Shador, I've said he's the best pure passer, but there are a lot of questions on his game. I have no problem with that. But for people trying to talk about he's a bad kid, or try to make this about character, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. He is a genuinely good kid. And when you mentioned smoke screens, that's totally it.
It is. It is. It's smoke screens. It's a fair point about Dion, because sometimes people don't understand that's a character, just like Bruce Springsteen has a character. The guy on stage, that's a character. And obviously, to extraordinary success, Taylor Swift has a character. The divide, understanding the divide, gives Dion the opportunity to be Dion and prime and super successful. So, yeah, his son is unique because he kind of understands that going in. I hope he takes nothing from that report. I took nothing from it but smoke. Somebody wants him to slip. They want him to slip so they can take him at a spot where otherwise they're not going to have a shot.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Listen, if I was picking in this draft, I would not take Shedeur in the top. And I love the kid. I think he's got a chance to be super good. I just think there are some question marks, and good teams don't gamble in that top half, top 2/3 of the first round. You just don't do it.
It's tough. It's really tough to do. I worry about. I know it sounds consistent. I always worry about size. I worry about size. Is he a little undersized? How much weight can he put on? And I worry about what level of protection can you give him at the top of the draft. So your point is a really decent one. How much of the NFL quarterback success is about the fit? So for Sanders, I would rather him be drafted in the perfect fit for him than the highest pick in the draft, because I think the perfect fit absolutely is much more important than being taken high, especially when the money isn't that big of an issue and the salary's slotted. So if you're looking long-term, which I'm assuming he is and his advisor folks are, they want to be in the best possible fit for him, ideally with some protection. And to me, it'll be interesting to see how much size he can add, because I always worry about durability, because we see so many great quarterback talents that get knocked out of having a great NFL career because they get hurt because they're too small or they get hit too much too early.
Well, and he holds the ball too long, and he runs a lot of east and west, not north and south. Okay, real quick.
Yes.
I have to just share this with you. I'll tell you who it was, but I don't want to give away the team. But an NFL executive told me they brought in one of the top quarterbacks in this class. Not going to say which quarterback. And they asked him about, being picked and getting picked where. And he had the best answer, and I wanted to throw it out to you. Tell me how good of an answer this is. He said, "Do I want my pride to be number one? Yes. Do I think I am number?" And by the way, just because we're talking about Shedeur, this is not Shedeur. This is another quarterback. He goes, "Do I think I'm the best quarterback in this class? I do." But he goes, because they were asking him, "Where do you think you should get picked?" He says, "But here's where I want to get picked." And he goes, "And I'm not lying to you. I think I deserve to be one. I'd love to be one for the pride issue." He said, "But I'm playing for my second contract." And he goes, "I would rather go to a team where I have a better shot at winning now than for my pride to get the coolness of being at number one if, oh, by the way, I suck in 3 years because I don't have a good team." This NFL executive said to me, "You can in no way tell anyone who that was." He goes, "Bajando, that kid skyrocketed up our board because of that answer." Is that not the best answer you've ever heard?
Pretty much. It's an answer that's got some wisdom in it. It reminds me of the Hard Knocks last year with the Giants when Jaden Daniels walked into their room. There's a certain presence and maturity. If you're drafting one of these quarterbacks, you want a guy thinking in that vein versus, I just want to be the top pick. I want to get the signing bonus. And then I don't really care what happens after that. That's one end of the stick. The other end is somebody thinking, hey, get me in the best position. I understand the second contract, the value in it, the chance to develop. Yeah, that's the kind of answer you want from somebody that you're going to entrust your franchise with.
I agree. All right, John, tell everybody where to find you on social media, would you?
I'm still out there at JP Spartan on the Twitter X device.
Awesome. See you next week.